When it comes to limited and non-limited release rye whiskeys that are finished these days, there are a lot, but none still more talked about this time of year than High West, a Midwinter's Night's Dram, and their port finished rye whiskey. It's a bottle High West leans on heavily these days, so much so that this bottle has risen to a price all the way to 150 bucks, with whiskey flippers setting prices still from $250 all the way up to $400 for this one. Well, today I got a sample of 2023's Act 11. We're gonna compare it to last year's Act 10. It's a Tuesday sampler. Stay tuned. It's the Mash and Drum. What's up, folks? I'm Jason C. from the Mash and Drum, and welcome back to the show. Like, subscribe, help grow the channel for the rest of 2023. Before we dive into the sample, I had a good buddy of mine send me a sample of this one. Wasn't able to, well, I'm not gonna say that, I'll rephrase it. I didn't really hunt Midwinter's Night's Dram this year, so I asked for a sample of it, and I got one so we could taste through it. A lot of you have been asking me for a review on this one, so we're gonna do it today. But before we dive into this popular whiskey, let's hear from today's sponsor, just in time for the holidays. It is Zbiotics. Today's sponsor is Zbiotics, the amazing prebiotic I've been using behind the scenes for months now, with all the great feedback from viewers, especially around this time of year, whether it's Halloween, whether it's Thanksgiving, and now we have Christmas coming up. It's really become the first drink of the night for a better tomorrow. So we just had Thanksgiving, was around a lot of friends and family. I brought out some bottles to try. A lot of them were interested in whiskey, want to try some really cool and sometimes rare stuff. But they were all a little bit worried about feeling, kind of down and out of it the next day. I said, hey, I got something for you. Why don't you try Zbiotics and see how you feel? I guarantee this stuff works. And guess what? They were as impressed as I was the first time I tried this. Zbiotics was developed by some very smart scientists who knew the real problem is not dehydration, it's actually a byproduct of alcohol that is most responsible for rough mornings after drinking. Zbiotics produces an enzyme like the one your liver uses to break down this byproduct. So anytime I know I'm gonna have a few drinks, maybe do a little bit of blending, do a whiskey tasting, or have some friends and family over around the holidays, I know if I take Zbiotics, I'll be able to bounce back the next day faster than ever. I mean, it's pretty simple. All you gotta do is drink one of these about an hour before you start drinking, and that's it. Still drink water to stay hydrated as always. Get a good night's sleep if you can, but Zbiotics will make it a lot easier to get out of the bed or get off the couch the next day. It's real science that works, guys. No random plant extracts, no off-the-shelf ingredients, no sugar added, 100% money-back guarantee. Since the holidays are here, there is no better time to give Zbiotics a try. Here's how. Get 15% off your first order of Zbiotics pre-alcohol prebiotic by clicking the link in the description box and use my code MASHANDDRUM at checkout. That's right. Use the code MASHANDDRUM at checkout to get 15% off your first order of Zbiotics. On top of that, if you leave a comment below how Zbiotics has worked so well for you, Zbiotics may choose you to win a free 12-pack. That's right, a free 12-pack of Zbiotics. So go stock up for the holidays before it's all gone, and thanks to Zbiotics and thanks to you for making the sponsors happen. Cheers. Now, last year when a Midwinter's Night's Dram Act 10 was released, we had an extra bottle named Encore that was released with it. It was aged exclusively in white port barrels and really was kind of to pay homage to the 10th anniversary of a Midwinter's Night's Dram. Now this year we have no Encore, but we still do have Act 11, made initially from a Rendezvous rye blend of MGP rye, which is 95% rye, 5% malted barley, and High West's own distillate, which is 80% rye and 20% malted barley. It's finished in ruby and tawny port barrels, bottled at 98.6 proof, and as I mentioned, priced at about $150 these days, with about 189,684 bottles that were produced. That's a lot. All right, so I'm also gonna pour last year's Act 10 so we can do a quick compare. Now from the sample, this is Act 11, Scene 7, for any of you guys that may have that specific bottle. Now, even though the rye spice is there, I'm picking up a ton of, rich caramel in here, a little bit of a brown sugar note too. So even the rye spice has been tamed down a little bit by, a lot of sweetness. The ruby and port are definitely making themselves to be known. You have some really nice, like red fruits in here. Yeah, this blend of like dark fruit, cinnamon, and chocolate all coming together. I usually tend to get chocolate on port finished whiskeys, and it's really nice. Let's do a quick comparison to Act 10. Act 10 is definitely a little bit brighter to me. A little bit more rye spice in Act 10, I think, from last year. But I think Act 11 is actually coming off a lot sweeter. So, all right, let's try Act 11. Here we go. So on this, I get, man, this is just all, it is spice from the rye. It is sweet tobacco heavy for me. This is like a very sweet cigar type thing going on. A lot of those dried cherries. Man, the cinnamon spice, the rye spice is all here. That's a really nice first sip. Second sip, it just is giving this really nice balance of, you know, kind of rich dark fruits, good spice. Again, that sweet tobacco note on the back end of this to kind of, you know, finish everything off. You know, 98.6, it's not going to really overpower you, but there's enough spice here that's balancing out, you know, kind of everything else, which I like. You know, it's like anything else with Midwinter's Night's Dram. The more you sip this, the easier it gets to drink. And I think the rye spice starts taking a little bit more of a back seat, even though you do get it on the finish. However, the front and the mid palate they just start getting really easy to sip. Starts getting really crushable. You get all those sweet flavors, the dark red fruit flavors, again, kind of like that rich, like cherry, almost borderline like fig. There's a little citrus there too, I think, from the rye spice as well, maybe a little bit of an orange note. But yeah, I mean, sweet, spicy. But again, as you sip it, it starts to get, you know, very, very easy sipping, which is why I think a lot of people like it. All right, let me do a quick sip of Act 10. Now, Act 10, I thought was a decent batch. I didn't think it was anything great last year. However, coming off Act 11, you see kind of where Act 10 falls behind. I think it's actually less interesting than Act 11 is. I think Act 11 has a little bit more going on than Act 10 does, especially when you kind of do a comparison here. I mean, the nose on 11's better. I think the palate on 11's better. Yeah, 10, even though it's sweet, there's also really no spice. At least after all these sips I'm taking, 11 is still holding its spice a little bit. Yeah, more spice on 11, but still pretty easy to sip up front. Again, these batches can vary, you know, little by little, but is Midwinter's Night's Dram still worth it? Let's final break down this thing. All right, final breakdown on a Midwinter Night's Dram from High West. This is Act 11. Price for this one, $150. Secondary, as I mentioned, you'll see these marked up anywhere from $250 to $400 still these days, which I think is pretty crazy. Availability on this is going to be good. Now, I don't know how much they leave for the gift shop versus how much they utilize out into the market. But with over, or I should say almost 190,000 bottles of these, there's going to be a good amount out there. It's just going to be dependent on how fast you can get it before anyone else does. Value for this one. These days, now this used to be a really good value, but now these days, you know, you have to give it a low value. There's just so many other port finished rye whiskeys on the market that can absolutely just take this out. So I'm going to give it a low value. The most I paid for this one, if it was still up to me, I wish this was about a $70 to $80 bottle. That's what I want to pay. So I guess I'll just say retail. I would not pay over retail for this given the amount of options that are out there as far as port finished ryes go. Alternatives for this one. I mean, who hasn't really been making a port finished rye these days? Now, back in the day, when High West and Midwinter's Night's Dram was kind of the only player in the game, now you have a lot of players in the game that have done port finish ryes. You have brands like Nulu, you have brands like Foregate, you have brands like this one. You have Smooth Ambler from Old Scout. So Smooth Ambler did a port cask finishes, a pretty affordable bottle, but one bottle above all, which is this one right here, which is the Sagamore Spirit Port Finish, which is, I think, about 103 proof, if I remember correctly. This one's 103 proof. I mean, these are fantastic. These run about, I think, 70 to 80 bucks. And I think these do really well in blinds against Midwinter's Night's Dram. It's just that there are so many alternatives. The market, unfortunately, has caught up to a Midwinter's Night's Dram. So is this a skip, a try before you buy, a buy or a buy and back it up? For me, if you're a fan of High West Midwinter's Night's Dram and you love it and you have loved it, you're going to enjoy Act 11 this year. So by all means, you know, buy it if you could find it. Again, is it good? Yeah. Is it still worth it these days? Not to me. I obviously didn't go and buy one. This bottle is probably one of those I'm just not going to hunt anymore. There's just too many good port finish ryes in the market that can hold my attention over this one. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed this review for Midwinter's Night's Dram, the Act 11 for 2023. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that subscribe button below. Please hit that like button. And if you haven't yet, follow me on Instagram. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this one. Are you done buying it? You done chasing it? Or are you still a buyer, even at 150 bucks? Always love hearing from you guys. And as I always say, it's not about the whiskey. It is the people you share with. Cheers. See you next time right here on The Mash and Drum.